This here is a brand new Specialized Tarmac SL7 Comp, which, thanks to the new SRAM rival eTap AXA group set, costs £4,500. And yes, that's not cheap, it's still a lot of cash, but it is the most affordable SL7 now available. So in this video, I'll share my thoughts on riding this bike, having lived with it for the last 4 to 6 weeks, go through some technical details on the frame and the group set, have a look back at the old tarmacs and how the bike has evolved over the years, and try and answer the question of whether all that performance and speed from the range-topping S-Works SL7 has been diluted in this more affordable trim. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Giro Clothing and their brand new Ondas collection, which I'm wearing right now. Looks fabulous, doesn't it? Really, really smart. And you too can buy it now with a 30% discount by using this code right here. Go to the website linked down below. Okay, on with the tarmac review. The Tarmac has been a US company's flagship race bike for nearly 20 years. It wasn't always a full carbon race bike. It started life as the S-Works E5, a half alloy, half carbon cyborg of a race bike. The first full carbon tarmac arrived in 2006 with the SL1, short for super light, and the frame was distinctive by way of its aero-shaped seat tube. At this time, Specialized were trying to break into the European road cycling market, and it was quick to recognise the value of sponsoring the best and biggest teams. This also gave it access to the most demanding riders, and it was feedback from the likes of Tom Boonen that really helped to shape the early tarmac. The result of this pro rider feedback was the SL2. Launched in 2008, this was a landmark development for the tarmac and is now considered a modern classic. It was so good in fact that it was evolution rather than revolution, with the SL3, SL4 and the SL5 that followed in its wake. The SL5 in 2015 also marked the first introduction of disc brakes to the tarmac line. I actually remember testing the 6.9 kilogram S-Works model and being won over by a new development in the road bike market. The SL6 was a ground up redesign with a bigger focus on aerodynamics, just as the original had done all those years ago, and a brand new visual identity as well. The SL7, launched in 2020, turned the aero up to 11, so advanced it made the Venge aero bike redundant. So it's clear the Tarmac is, and always has been, a bike designed for racing. And that is really clear when you get on this bike. It's a bike built for going fast, and it wants you to ride fast all the time. It's not a bike for riding slowly and taking the view around you. It's getting your head down, pushing hard on the pedals, and really going as fast as you can. It clearly borrows heavily from the Venge it replaced, and feels almost as quick in my testing, and definitely feels faster than the old SL6 it replaces. That bike was no slouch, but this bike is clearly much quicker, at least in my hands and on my roads that I'm currently riding. So a really fast frame. You can see all the aero influences on the bike from the fork blades. The down tube reasonably round, but then we have an aero seat tube, a seat post, internal seat clamp, and very aero shaped dropped rear stays, all in the pursuit of aerodynamics. And then the star feature on this bike is the internal cable routing, which is becoming a key feature on top end road race bikes in that pursuit of marginal aero gains. So we have the same stem and same internal cable routing system as the S-Works model at the top, and it's basically the same as we saw in the Venge in the past. When it comes to internal cable routing systems, most manufacturers have their own approach, and some are good and some are bad, it has to be said. The Specialized, in my opinion, sits towards the better end of the spectrum. I took the old Venge on a cycling trip to France a few years ago, and taking it apart to fit in a bike box wasn't that bad. It all came apart fairly well, and this system is basically the same. So the big advantage of this system, of this approach, and it's the same on the S-Works model at the top, is that you can easily change the handlebar and you can easily change the stem. We've got a very distinctive stem that's designed to fit flush with these spacers, give a nice cohesive look, design language and so on. But you can swap the stem for a normal stem if you have a sponsor allegiance you need to address, or you can change the handlebar for another handlebar, carbon, or go for an aero handlebar like on the S-Works model at the top. So you're not tied into a bespoke system, a one-piece handlebar that is popular on other bikes. You can fit a longer stem, fit a wider handlebar, whatever you need to do, you can do it really easily. The speed of the new Tarmac SL7 is clearly not in doubt, both in the company's aero wind tunnel testing and in my real-world testing here in the Cotswolds. And I say it's comparable to the Scott Addict or the Villiers Falante perhaps, but the one area where the bike has been compromised, at least compared to the old SL6, which I regarded as one of the best all-round complete race bikes, is in compliance and comfort, especially on my rough roads here in the Cotswolds. And one of the most striking impressions when I first rode it is how lively it feels on the road. There's quite a lot of feedback through the contact points, through the tyres, the saddle and handlebar. You can feel the tyres kind of dancing around on the bumps and cracks and imperfections on the road surface. And it's not the calmest or the most settled experience. This almost darty, edgy ride character really surprised me, I'll openly admit. And that's because race bikes in the past few years have really improved in terms of comfort. Although comfort and compliance is never at the top of the list of priorities, it's well behind speed, weight and other key factors, stiffness as well. But it's also a side effect of the improvements in frame design and frame manufacturing and also wider tyres. So the bike, in my experience, isn't as smooth as the giant TCR or the Villiers Falante, but probably has the edge on those bikes in terms of raw speed. And I realise not everybody is as concerned with comfort as I clearly am, although I do get quite a few questions about the relative comfort of different race bikes, so clearly an issue for many people buying a race bike like the Tarmac. The Tarmac might be a race bike designed for going as fast as possible, and that usually means compromises. But here we have some very sensible real-world details, like the external threaded bottom bracket, so a really nice sensible move away from press fit there. We had disc brakes, because the SL7 is only available with disc brakes. Doesn't bother me, I think disc brakes are better than rim brakes personally, and allows much wider tyre clearance. So a new bike will take up to 32, which is massive for a race bike. When you go back a few years and a 25 was the widest you could get, and even then you probably incur a bit of rubbing if you were unlucky. And these 26 tyres are good, but I rode mostly with 28 to get a bit more smoothness. I would even consider going to a 30 because you're not really damaging the performance of the bike. In fact, looking at most studies, a wide tyre at low pressure is faster, especially on the sort of tarmac roads I ride here, which probably isn't the sort of tarmac they had in mind when they developed the Tarmac. They probably had smoother stuff in mind, but this is rough, and a wide tyre at low pressure and tubeless, if you can go down that route, definitely helps. So wider rubber, more comfort with no downsides. And the great news with the Comp model is that the frame is essentially identical to the S-Works model right at the top of the company's range. The only difference is in the carbon fibre used in the layup, and you see that on the scales. The S-Works has a claimed 800 gram weight, while this is 120 grams heavier for a 920 gram frame weight. So still light, still sub-kilo, definitely not going to hold you back. On the scales, this bike weighs 8.3 kilograms without pedals, weighed without pedals because your pedals might be lighter or heavier than the ones I'm using. Don't think the weight of this bike holds it back at all, especially on flatter, undulating roads where the aero performance of the new Tarmac SL7 really give you the upper hand against your rivals on lesser bikes. The only time the weight might be a factor is if you're riding in the mountains where you're going for a KOM. But let's be real for a moment. Most of us probably have a few more kilos excess on the body than the bike that's shed first. And let's also remember, we're not pros, we're not paid to ride bikes. We ride bikes because we love riding bikes. We enjoy being out in the countryside, pushing ourselves as much as we want to, and this bike allows you to indulge your desire to go fast when you want to. All the models in the Tarmac SL7 range essentially use the same frame, and if you go right to the top of the range, they're all singing, all dancing. S-Works model will set you back nearly £12,000, a lot of cash. But the great thing with this bike is that £4,500 gets you essentially the same frame and all the same performance, handling and speed, but in a package that's a lot more affordable. The reason for this new lower price point is all down to the brand new SRAM Rival eTap AXA group set launched earlier this year. And the main takeaway here is you basically get all the same performance and functionality of red and force at the top end of the range, but due to different materials, like lower grade materials like aluminium rather than carbon fibre, the price is much lower. There is a weight penalty which will matter to some people, as we'll find out in the comments later, but less to other people. The gear changes are super quick, super quiet as well, no noise from the group set in the 4 or 5 weeks I've been riding it. Never missed a gear change, front or rear. And the 48-35 chain set and 10-36 cassette give all the gears you need. Nice wide spread of ratios for steep climbs, fast descents, attacking, sprinting, everything in between. And its gear ratio, I think, works really well here in the real world, whether you're racing or whether you're just riding for fun and try and get your heart rate up and have a good time. The one small change I really like on the new SRAM Rival group set is the new hoods are a bit smaller than red and force, and I actually prefer the shape. They fit my small hands much nicer, slightly more ergonomic, so that's a real achievement in my book, although you do lose some functionality compared to red and force in terms of blips and contact point adjustment, but a small trade-off for better ergonomics. I won't go into too much detail about the group set in this video. Instead, I'll save my long-term thoughts and experience for a separate video. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see that. Sadly, I can't be so enthusiastic about the wheels on this bike. Now, while they're fine, they're reasonably light, nice sturdy alloy rim, and the hubs are well sealed from the elements. They aren't the sort of wheels you'd expect on a bike of this price. And Trek will sell you an Amonda SL with a SRAM Rival group set and a set of carbon wheels for a bit less money. Specialized gets the details just right on its road bikes. So nice tyres, fast, grippy and durable. A really comfy power saddle, love the shape of these saddles. And a nice compact shaped alloy handlebar. A shame perhaps not to have a carbon handlebar, but an easy upgrade down the line, either a carbon round handlebar or an aero handlebar to get even more speed out of this bike. And I mentioned for the supercast bar tape, which is really thin but grippy. My preference for a thin bar tape, lots of feel through the handlebars, but nice and grippy when you're not riding with gloves. For reference then, this is a size 56. I'm about 180 centimeters, and apart from the stem being a bit short and a bit too high, it fits me like a glove. If I buy on the bike, I'll fit a longer stem and slam it a little bit, but that's the only change I would make. To summarise my thoughts on how the Tarmac SL7 rides and performs and handles, I think, in my opinion, it steers closer to an aero road bike like the old Venge. It feels much more like that bike in terms of the speed and the stiffness and the handling. And sadly, it's lost some of the smoothness, some of the compliance of the old SL6, which will matter or not depending on what you want from your race bike. If it's pure speed and aggression, you'll love this bike. If you want a smooth ride, there are better options in my opinion. But it's still a fantastic bike if you love going fast, and it's hard to deny the speed of this bike, insatiable. And now to try and answer the question I posed at the beginning of the video, and something I kept asking myself while I was riding this bike for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, is does the weight of the bike, does the more affordable price point blunt the performance, the speed and the handling of the Tarmac SL7 frame set? And the answer is no. You get all the performance, all the speed, all the great handling from the bike, and it's not blunted by this more lowly spec in any way. Yes, it won't be outright as fast as the S-Works due to lower weight, but it's still great fun to ride. It's still blipping fast, it looks great, and with set of carbon wheels, you won't be holding anybody up in a race or sprint for the finish line. It is a fantastic riding bike. A few blemishes perhaps, not quite perfect, but very, very impressive frame set and handlebar setup, and a bike I reckon that could last you for a good few years. Anyway, that has been my review of the brand new Specialized Tarmac SL7 Comp. Hopefully it's in stock now, I don't know if it is, but I'll put a link to their website down below. And don't forget to check out the Giro clothing at the link down below as well and get a 30% discount on this fantastic looking clothing so you can look as cool as I do. Anyway, that's all for now. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you all again next time. Thank you so much for watching.